everyone, welcome to another episode of iThrive's Geeky Podcast. I am Anagha Gawde, a researcher at R&D. In the last episode, we saw about the science behind intermittent fasting and what are the benefits of it and the various types. For today's episode, we have Manali with us. Hi, Manali.
Hi, Anagha.
Manali is the head of R&D at iThrive. And for today's episode, the topic is circadian rhythm. Are you excited about it?
Totally. So, sleep is one of the things that is so close to my heart, and I like reading about sleep and how we can improve it and what are the factors that disrupt it. So, I'm totally excited.
Rightly said, sleep is very important for us because it benefits with our healthy body and healthy mind also. And people usually say that we need to have a minimum of 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So, what is your take on it?
Yes. So, as you rightly said, sleep is important. Sleep is the restorative process, regenerative process, wherein we get the time to rest and rejuvenate from whatever day and the tiredness we've been through. So, yes, if you're talking about the timing, then yes, it is advised for adults to sleep at least for 7 hours. Let's say if you're talking about a bracket, it's 7 to 9. And if any adults, like young adults or children or pregnant women or someone with sleep debt, so they require more sleep, like let's say more than 9 hours, because they are suffering from some illness and they need to recover that through sleep. So yes, that is important, and I think we only realize it's important when we suffer from any condition later on in life, right? So there are conditions like obesity, right, weight gain, or hypertension, or heart disease, or even stroke and depression. So these are caused when you are not sleeping enough for a long, like extended period of time. So yes, that is when we realize, and I personally believe that this is our prime time. If we're talking about 20s, 30s, this is the age when we need to focus on our health, and this is when we get the early signs of health depletion if you're not taking care of it. Because earlier, during adolescence or childhood, our body used to be okay with everything that you give it, right? And later on, let's say our parents' age, we realize that there are many diseases erupting, right? So this is, I think, the reflection of what people do in their 20s and 30s. So this is the right time to prevent and take hold of our health, and sleep is entirely free. I understand that there are many factors because of which it can be difficult to sleep or not sleep consistently, but yes, we can work towards it, and it is so important.
I think everyone over here loves to sleep. There is for that.
No denial.
So, are there any chemical factors which also, regulate your sleep cycle?
Yes, totally. So there are two that I can think of. So one is GABA and one is glutamate. Okay, so GABA is gamma aminobutyric acid, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So when we talk about neurotransmitters, these are either inhibitory or excitatory, right? So as the name suggests, inhibitory, it inhibits our function. Okay, so it promotes sleep and it gives rise to sleep. Okay, and glutamate is responsible for our wake. So to keep us awake and wake us up after a night of sleep. So they need to be regulated, and the cycle should be regulated and in place. If it gets disrupted by many factors that we'll discuss later in the podcast. So yes, like we need to keep it regulated. And I think there are more neurotransmitters that have been researched. So one is histamine, then there is norepinephrine and serotonin. Okay, so histamine, as we already know, it's an amino acid. So this is which gives rise to arousal. Okay, and the norepinephrine and serotonin also have some role to play in arousal, but they also dictate the muscle tone. So I think you can easily observe the relation between sleep and muscle tone and how good you feel in your muscles. Let's say about pain or energy. So it totally is determined by the sleep.
Yeah. So when we say sleep, I directly correlate it with circadian rhythm. And we know that circadian rhythm is a biological process which regulates our sleep-wake cycle. But how will you define what circadian rhythm is?
Yes, okay. So before we start with the definition, I have a fun fact here. So the word rhythm, okay, so perhaps it's the longest word in English dictionary which has like no vowels at all.
Oh, yes.
Right? So there are many like gibberish words like This is also one word which is
Yes.
longer than rhythm, but I won't consider that a word because it's like just TSK,
Yeah.
something like that. So yes, and talking about circadian, so let's break it. And circa is about at around that period of time. Okay, circa is about, and dn comes from d's, which dictates day.
Oh,
Okay, so about 24 hours or about a day. I think you must have seen in trending videos that people put circa 1998.
yes,
So at
yes,
around that time this
yes.
happened. So when we tell stories, we say this. So yes, circadian rhythm is a biological clock, as you rightly said, which talks about 24-hour pattern. Okay, so it is dictated or it is regulated by the response of the external stimuli. So let's say light or darkness, or let's say feeding and fasting. So our body's response against these external environmental stimuli. Yes, and the circadian rhythm, as we're talking, it is regulated by a region called suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is located in the hypothalamus of our brain. So it dictates almost all the circadian rhythms in our body, and it dictates, and there are many small regions in different cells which get that signal, and then accordingly we respond to the stimuli. So there are genes identified for this mechanism, which is clock gene. So it stands for circadian locomotor output cycles kaput, clock gene. So polymorphisms in that, that is mutations in that, dictate us like if we have like which kind of chronotype,
Oh,
right? So if we are like early risers or night owls, likewise.
yes. So, as you spoke about like the various external factors which can, which affect the pattern, are there any factors you can think about that can disrupt the flow of the circadian rhythm?
Yes, totally. I'd like to ask you this question, like, what do you think is the number one disruptor of sleep?
I think many people over here, they when they feel sleepy, their go-to thing is coffee.
Yes,
So
a
I think
stimulant.
coffee may be one of the factors.
Yes, totally. Okay, so let's start with coffee. So what coffee does is, and I think we can have a long series of podcasts. We've already done a couple, and we're also coming up with another coffee episode. So yes, what role it does actually is our body has adenosine receptor, okay, and adenosine is produced more and more. So more and more adenosine is produced as and when the day passes and when we feel tired. Okay, so adenosine gets bound to this receptor. It's like a puzzle piece fitting together. Okay, and because we are having coffee midday, okay, then the adenosine's place is taken up by the coffee molecule, right? Which is why it promotes the feeling of wakefulness and that activity and awakeness, and we don't fall asleep, right? So that is what coffee does biochemically. And there is also another this receptor antagonist, which is norepinephrine. So it also blocks this place, and it doesn't let adenosine bind to it. So yes, that is how coffee disrupts us. And then there are many genetic mutations which dictate how you exactly respond to coffee. So some people don't fall asleep even after having
Yeah.
coffee. Some people get agitated, I think, like you and me.
Yeah.
So it gives rise to like palpitations and anxious behavior.
Yes.
So it totally depends on your genes. And I think there is also cross reactivity which comes into picture, like what other foods that you've had earlier and the sensitivities that you have. Yes. Next can be alcohol. So how we talked about GABA and glutamate. So it totally disrupts that cycle. So alcohol disrupts the glutamate and GABA cycle, the sleep-wake cycle, which is why it is a disruptor of sleep. Then is the artificial lights. Okay, so the light, blue light emitted from our phone screens, laptops, television screens, or even the tube lights and bulbs that we have installed in our homes. So they mimic the daylight. Okay, so in villages they don't have much of these artificial light. They by the like they wake up early with the sunrise, and after sunset they just have their dinner and fall asleep. So that is like they are more close to the circadian rhythm, the sun's pattern, than us, right? And what we have done is we have replaced our lifestyle. We have added the artificial lights, which is why our body thinks, okay, there is extended period of day, It doesn't recognize it as night, as darkness, which is why yes, this is a disruptor, and it disrupts the melatonin production. So we don't fall asleep, or we don't get that feeling of sleepiness earlier, and it takes time. Then I can think of is EMFs.
Yes.
So I think you have some expertise on EMFs.
I think EMFs, they are referred to as electromagnetic fields, are the frequencies which are released from these electrical gadgets like our smartphones, the PCs, and our laptops and all. And they can be one of the reason why our circadian rhythm is disrupted. I can also think about like various mutations can also be the reason, right? The mutations in the circadian rhythm genes.
Totally, totally.
Yes, right?
So they also dictate our chronotypes. And yes, when we talk about the EMFs, so these are all the electromagnetic fields and radiation secreted or emitted by devices which are not wired. So even our mobile phone is the receiving network.
Maybe with the Bluetooths and
Yeah, Bluetooth, even the network signal, internet signal from the towers,
Oh.
right? And yes, Bluetooths or like wireless earphones. So that is one. So these exposures also gives rise to reduced sleep efficiency or confusion, trouble concentrating or headaches. So some people are more prone to be sensitive to EMF, and some people don't even realize, or internally it does damage them.
Okay. Thinking of one more reason, jet lag can also be one of the reasons. You know, you're crossing different time zones, which will throw your whole circadian rhythm out of sync.
Right.
So yeah.
And also, I think those who have like shift duties, like
Yes.
which is not, which is why I said considering the normal sleep routine. So people who are doing night shifts, they're not in sync with the circadian rhythm and the sunlight. So yes, that also is a disruptor.
So we have spoken about various factors, but can you think of something which can regulate all these things?
Yes. Okay. So to start with nutrition, so first is high protein intake. Okay. So if we are having like enough adequate protein intake, then the sleep waking episodes at night are shorter or null. Okay, so that is one thing. And high carbohydrate intake and also tryptophan, you might have heard.
Yeah.
That it reduces the sleep latency. Okay, so it has like shorter sleep latencies. Now, what is sleep latency? The time you take to fall asleep at night. Like after you turn off the light, how quickly you can fall asleep. So that is determined by the carbohydrate and tryptophan intake. And also, I think if you have like previous sleep debt, you have not slept well for consecutive days, then yes, if you're, I think it's like a test. If you're sleeping within 5 minutes, then it is not a healthy sign, but it is indicated by sleep debt that you are deprived from previous sleep, which is why you can now easily fall asleep. How is it for you? Like, can you fall asleep sooner or?
I think if if, as you said, carbs carbs are one of the reason. So yeah, if I have a lot of carbs in my dinner, I think I fall asleep easier. As far if I'm not having any dinner, if I'm sleeping on empty stomach, of course, I can't sleep very easily.
Okay.
But yes, if I'm tired, you know, after a day, if I'm too tired, if I'm exercising, I sleep very fast.
Right. So that brings me to another point, which is exercise. So exercise is again, so all the neurotransmitters that we talked about, so it mixes everything up. Okay, so as then when if we are like sedentary or if we are thinking a lot, so all the neurotransmitters, all the emotions, all the chemicals in the body, they get settled, and you know that everything that gets settled for a prolonged time, it starts becoming toxic.
Yeah.
So when we exercise, everything gets its right place and it's in circulation, it's in motion. So that is one thing, and it also helps with reducing the anxiety episodes or soothing the anxiety, and even the muscle tone that we talked about. So it also helps relieve muscle like mucosa skeletal pain. So it also helps with the muscle pain. Okay, so if we are tired or if we are anxious, we observe that there is muscle pain or fatigue is there. So it helps with that. So exercise is one thing, and talking about the sleep hygiene, you might have heard about it. It's like a fancy new term. wherein we take care of the environment, so the temperature and the light, like amount of light. So as we all know that dark environment is preferred to sleep well without any stimulants. So yes, dark environment and warm temperatures. So I've observed this, and I've also read about it, that if the temperatures are cold, if there is cold temperature and the temperature is low, then it gives rise to higher episodes of nightmares. Yes, so if it is pitch dark, then it is great. And then there is relaxing music. So you can listen to lullabies that you might have heard or listened to in your childhood, or some relax, soothing music, or white noise, pink noise. There are different kinds of sounds that resemble like water or fire, like beach waves, which gives rise to that soothing effect. And there are also sleep podcasts which tell you a bedtime story, and it goes on loop, like the same story gets repeated and you don't realize it, you fall asleep. And then we come to the EMFs. So as we talked about that, it's like a disruptor. So this is where we can use it to our advantage and understand our knowledge, apply it, and not have EMFs during our bedtime. So I think cutting down the phone usage at night helps. And then there is one thing that I personally have tried is phone free mornings. So like the moment you wake up, and if you are on your phone, because you are like absolutely zero thought state when you sleep, and when you wake up, you remember everything, what happened yesterday, what I'm feeling now. And yes, so when you're phone free, you get the time to be mindful and relaxed. Otherwise, you are exposed to like millions of notifications, many people talking, many social interactions. So that is not the best time. Just give yourself half an hour or hour free of phones in the morning. And yes, it makes tremendous difference.
As you rightly said, our smartphones, they have become a necessity in our day-to-day life, because it is like we are almost working through it nowadays. After
Yes.
the lockdown, I think people can't ignore it, but there might be some ways that we can cut down on the EMFs in our lives, right? So
Yes. So as we talked about the wireless earphones, right? So use wired earphones as much as you can. That cuts down on EMF. Then there is a replacement of the white lights with yellow lights. So yellow bulbs, these are soothing. These are not like a stimulant or mimicry of day. So that is there. And as much as you can, just get done with your work in the daytime when there's sun still out, right? Because the other part of the day you can use it for socializing, for relaxing, or inculcating into any leisure activities. So use the time to relax down and wind down.
yeah, I think even switching off the Wi-Fi at night will also be
Yes,
helpful.
totally. And when not in use, if it's not in use,
Yeah.
you're not at home, even to save your bill, to save the electricity, and save each other from the radiation, yes, so switch off the Wi-Fi as well.
There is also the trend of binge watching the whole night, a series that you like, you can just binge watch. I think that trend should also be cutting down if everyone loves their sleep. Right
Yes,
now.
and we personally realize that, right? Even if we're getting that quick dopamine, we
Yeah.
don't end up feeling that good after binge watching.
Yes.
And I think Krishna is also researching on eyesight and vision, and he
Yes.
also talked yesterday that phone, because now what we call the binge watch apps, these are also available on our phones,
Yes.
right? So the distance is not that healthy. So whenever you can, use the bigger screens, like be intentional, watch the movie and then go to sleep, or just end
Yeah.
it there and then come back. And it is also said that use your bed or your bedroom to only sleep and sex. Right? So don't do any other like active work there.
Yeah.
Like no studying or no working in your bed. And even my mother believes that the room in which you're sleeping, it should be separate from where you work.
Rightly said. It was an amazing session, Manali. It was really amazing because I got to know about a lot of things about circadian rhythms and various neurotransmitters which are important for sleep. also how to cut down on disruptors. So, while doing your research on circadian rhythm, did you come across any findings like something very new?
Yes, totally. So how we talked about the circa period, right? So here we're talking about 24-hour cycle, but there are many cycles. So I think some cycles are annual, some are diannual, or some are there is one infradian rhythm.
Oh.
So it is different depending on the time period, and I think we've covered the infradian rhythm in one of the reels that we
Yeah.
shot for menstrual phases, and it is so helpful if we take care of our body, especially menstruators, because there are different phases, so there are different hormones and there are different feelings that we feel. So it needs separate foods, separate exercise. Even exercise apps nowadays have different workouts for each of the phases.
Oh.
And we can also plan our work accordingly, right? So paying attention to that, because like men are more inclined or more habituated to this circadian rhythm of 24-hour period, and we women, this is kind of unnatural for us because we are not just in the same mood every day.
Yes.
So catering to our emotional and hormonal needs, I think that can be modified.
Yeah. So I hope the audience have taken a note on all the things because this is really important. Everyone here loves their sleep.
Yes.
Who doesn't want to give up their sleep? Yes. So if you have any comments, do comment in the comment section, and you can also give us the different topics that you want us to cover in our next podcast episodes. Do like, share, and comment. And happy learning.